Well, that was 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back.
何の意志も持たず積もり続けた石火が雪崩となって全てを押し流す時、全ての石火に等しく責任があるんじゃねえのか。
よし、任務開始だ。
With the resurgence of Evangelion on Netflix, now seems like as good a time as any for a good old-fashioned mecha game. Hardcore mecha gives you the exciting action of a mecha anime in a 2D side-scrolling shooter. Rocket Punch Games has done really well to bring this game to life, which surprised me given its art style. Hardcore Mecha's art looks like something you'd see in a mobile game with its super deformed mecha designs. Usually that's not really my thing, but I grew used to it because of how the combat mechanics, different mecha playstyles, and soundtrack all flow strangely well with the visuals. There's also a lot of really nice 2D rendering and 3D-like animations that add a lot to it. The single-player story has unique missions, some really good action cutscenes, and nice voice acting when it's there. It makes you feel like you're the protagonist of your own action mecha anime. The story itself isn't very deep, but it has some really cool villains, and I was surprised to find the missions weren't generic and repetitive. There's stealth infiltration, underwater missions, space battles, big boss fights, and more. The mechas can shoot guns, rockets, fly around, guard, do some physical combat. You can also eject from your mech and play as the pilot, who is much more vulnerable but can still lay down damage and try to avoid dying if their mecha does. There's also loads of weapon and armor customizations you can configure on your mech. The multiplayer is really fun, there's a ton of mechs you can choose from and they all have very different playstyles. There's mechs with very high mobility and flying powers, mechs with great physical combat strength, mechs with auto-targeting and armor, mechs that are more balanced, even mechs that will cover your opponent's screen in paint so they can't see. The more you level up in the multiplayer, the more mechas and skins you can unlock, and there's a lot of them. You can play online or locally with the split screen. Right now there's just a free-for-all game mode where you can fight up to 3 other people to see who gets the most points. If your mech's health gets low, you can eject from it and run to a safe house to respawn in a new mech without dying. And every time you respawn, you can change your mech, which is nice since you aren't locked into your choice and can change to counter opponents if needed. Alright, now let's talk about some of the problems. The controls are probably the main thing in this game that could be a problem for you, particularly with the aiming. By default, you aim and move with the left stick, which can make it tricky to aim because it means you have to keep moving yourself towards your target. You can hold down the right trigger to keep yourself in place when you aim, but then you can't move to dodge attacks. Since all the mechs have different playstyles, some might be easier to deal with than others for this, but some pose big problems due to it. To address this, Rocket Punch Games released an update adding another controller type that allowed players to aim with the right stick, which helps, but now it makes some of the melee tricky, because you expect it to hit where you're going, but it goes to wherever you left your aiming at. One other issue I had to deal with playing online if the host was lagging. Usually if that happens and it gets too frustrating for you to play, you just pause the game and leave the lobby. But when it happened in this game, even pausing the game and trying to leave was lagging just as bad as everything else in the lobby. It became frustrating to even leave the game, which tells me even the pause menu UI is connected to the host of the lobby when it shouldn't be. There's also some content that was promised with the Kickstarter campaign for this project that just isn't there, namely an arcade and survival mode, both of which would also support co-op. Arcade will let you fight different characters and additional bosses, while Survival would let you defend against waves of enemies for various rewards and gear to upgrade your mecha with. Despite promising these game modes in the Kickstarter, the game is out without the content in it, the game isn't listed as early access, and the devs haven't said anything about it yet, not even saying that it's still in development or that they were abandoned. As a result, currently the game feels a bit lacking in content for its $20 price tag. But all those issues aside, Hardcore Mecha is still very fun and I would still very much recommend it for the multiplayer alone. When you mix ninja girls and visual novels, usually what you get is something very generic. They're only there to sell you sexy waifu gifts and not much else. That's exactly what I expected with this next game, but it turned out to be a little better than I thought. Its full title is Ninja Girl and the Mysterious Army of Urban Legend Monsters, Hunt of the Headless Horseman. With its long name and bland marketing, I almost didn't try this game out. But hey, it's from Sekai Project, and they usually make some decent stuff. You follow the story of Kiri and Mary, who run a Japanese-style cafe in America. In their world, urban legends, magic, and monsters are all real, so their cafe also runs as a sort of cafe for the supernatural as well. Kiri is a ninja girl who also has dog ears. Mary is based on the urban legend Bloody Mary, so she's a ghost that lives in a mirror. They both live together and run the cafe, growing a strong bond and teasing each other. Then, one night, they find another girl unconscious outside, the Headless Horseman of Sleepy Hollow trying to capture her, and a mysterious Kilroy was here graffiti on their wall. While Ninja Girl and the Headless Horseman was better than I expected, it's still not great. It falls victim to a lot of filler scenes and really drawn out character interactions that have no real reason being there. Not to mention how underdeveloped and forgettable the characters are, and the forced sexual CGs. The only connection Mary even has to her urban legend is that she can enter mirrors. What kind of made this game stand out to me was how in-depth the writer goes with describing all the history, culture, and even science behind certain things. Usually writers only do this for their own fantasy elements in order to build their world. In this game, the writer talks about all the real weapons and techniques used, as well as the magic and races of their world. It makes the game more interesting because it teaches you all of this actual cool info while telling you a short fantasy story. Though sometimes they go a little too far with it by going into vivid detail describing things that just don't matter at all. It's a pretty short story with just 4 characters, around 20 CGs, and about 5 to 9 hours of playtime depending on your reading speed. But it has nice voice acting and does really well with getting you into the scenes in action. What I also enjoy is how the game tries to set up a nice theme, which is something I didn't expect at all. The Headless Horseman is an immortal dark being who wants to keep fighting and live forever. Kiri is a ninja who claims she isn't afraid of death, and Mary is a ghost who exists only to get revenge on the Horseman for killing her and her family. The three have to deal with the idea of accepting death after their core beings all reject the very notion of it. Unfortunately, the ending takes this actually well done theme and throws it in the trash. They didn't want to go for a bittersweet ending that worked perfectly for its themes, and that ruined a lot of the impact the ending had. In the end, it felt like nothing was really learned. Instead, it just started advertising the next chapter in the series after the credits like some kind of Marvel movie. Ninja Girl and the Headless Horseman, which is what they should have just called it, was still better than I expected. And as disappointed as I am with its ending, I would still recommend it if you don't mind its short length for its $15 price. Some of it is pretty forgettable, but I enjoyed the information and themes it almost accomplished portraying.
洞天福地，神道之具。数百年来，仙师学院守护着魔神封印，让世人远离暗虚之难。然而，太平终有时，月食之夜。 洞天结界突然被天火击碎，封印崩溃，暗虚四散，魔神即将再临世界。
Zengeon is the only other decent anime game to come out this week. But when I say decent, I say that with a lot of asterisks and giant scare quotes. The game is a Chinese roguelike ARPG with a cast of 5 characters to choose from with different abilities. It plays kind of like Ruby Grim Eclipse, which isn't a good thing. It gets very repetitive really quick, with not much to do except continue the same map grind again and again but as different characters. It's decent in that it works, which is sad that that's the bar for anime games on Steam, but the abilities make the characters play differently, it supports local and online co-op, and the character and level art is also pretty good. There are 2 game modes in Zengeon, Story and Guard. Guard mode is for just defending a point from endless enemies, which can be fun, but the map for it is very small. Story mode is this game's main content where you go through a few levels for 3 worlds and fight a boss for each of them. The drops and enemies are random, but the maps are all the same. There's also hidden side areas you can clear and little shrine shops where you can exchange your items. You start with a refillable healing potion item and your base skills. You can also pick up spirits that upgrade your character character, like a random chance to regenerate health or to deal ice damage. There's random crates that you need coins from enemies to open, and each gives you a bunch of experience points or a choice between 2 spirits. Enemies will sometimes drop skill upgrades, spirits, or items, and if your item slots are filled, you can either swap one item out for it, or you can sacrifice it to upgrade one of the items you have. All of the spirits and item levels have little stack effects and level caps as well. You can choose to play from 2 characters at the start of the game, and the rest you need to unlock by beating the story and collecting story items. But after playing the game for about 9 hours, I was only able to unlock 1 character. That's because the other 2 require finding story items for the 2 main characters, but the drops for them seem very random. I got 1 story item for each character, and still haven't been able to figure out yet exactly how I even got them. At this point, I'm just assuming beating a boss gives you random chances to find story items. What I do know is that these shouldn't be random, or if they are, the game should be extremely generous with them. I don't want to have to put 50 hours into the same map grind over and over again just for 2 other characters. Given the repetitive nature of the gameplay, the only thing that makes runs different is using the other characters, but if the characters are locked behind many hours of hopeful grinding for random drops, then it gets pretty easy to get tired of it. By the way, if you play this game solo, you definitely don't want to swap out the healing potion you start with. It heals half your health, and upgrading it just gives you another chance to drink from it. In roguelike fashion, dying in this game solo means your death is permanent, and you go all the way back to the title screen. And since you probably won't ever have the healing potion drop again, you really can't afford to swap it out, especially since drinking the potion was the best way to get healing. You can get a lucky run with a lot of health regeneration spirit drops, but most of the time you're just depending on the small amount of health you get from enemies and props around the map. But even if you do keep the potion, you can't even use it without a certain amount of power, which you can temporarily get from fighting enemies. So if you're low health and you really need to use your potion, you need to fight enemies and hope you can get enough power in time to use your potion before getting killed. You don't get healed at all from leveling up or going to the next level, so the game is very difficult solo with all that and its permadeath element. So I guess if you're in for more of a challenge like that, then this is a game for you to try out. Playing this game co-op is very clearly the way it was intended. It's much easier to fight off the mobs and enemies and bosses, and if you die, somebody else can revive you to full health instantly. There's not even a cooldown on it, or a cast time. You're just back. It makes clearing the game so easy, but you really don't want to risk joining a random online lobby. There's no host transferring in this game, so if the host just leaves or disconnects, then everyone in the game just gets kicked back to the title screen, all progress gone. And if one player in your lobby walks away, you can't teleport to the next level either, unless they're kicked from the party. Also, you won't find a lot of people online a lot of the time because most of its player base is in China. All of this is after you ignore the game's horrible English translation, its very weak attempt at what it calls a story, and its horrible controller support for the menus. Zengeon right now feels like a very unpolished early access game. It costs $9, and I guess it works enough that you won't feel scammed for paying that, but you'll certainly feel disappointed in its current state. Maybe wait to see if the devs polish it more first. And that's all for this week's episode of Steam Weeb. There wasn't that much games that actually came out. And the ones that did come out, a lot of them were just hentai puzzle games. The only other one that I guess tried, and I use that term very loosely, was Super Web Kittens. And we don't talk about Super Web Kittens, okay? We don't talk about whatever nightmare fuel that shit is. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to support me on Patreon, subscribe to me here, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitch, follow me in life, and I'll see you next week. Actually, I might end up talking to you all in 2 weeks, because I'm going on a trip to Canada next week. So I'll be in Halifax for that week. So I won't be around to make a video here. It might be a little delayed, or I'll just do 2 weeks into 1 week next week. I don't know. Something. We'll figure something. Bye. Bye.
Since I was a young man, I've had this plan to stay in Japan as some type of ninja picture. Living like a Christian scripture, differ, thinking